Hello and welcome back to Here's the Thing. We are here to give you the live update of our review on Avatar Fire and Ash, the third film in the Avatar franchise. Just came out today. The release day is technically tomorrow of the third film here, and maybe the Avatar trilogy, but at least this little pack of three here. I'm joined by an Avatar superfan, or at least a Way of Water superfan. Ari, my new show partner, is here to review this with me. Ari, give me your thoughts going into this. How do you feel about Avatar as a franchise? I know it's kind of divisive among like film fans. Some people really hate this franchise. Some people are in love with it. So how'd you feel going into this movie? What were your expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking forward to it just based on the fact of what the first two were able to accomplish, especially the second one. The visuals, the world he created, it was cool to have. There's not a lot of Native American, Native in general representation in film. It was cool to have something like that in a blockbuster. I was definitely looking forward to this one because I really love the last one. And so I had a lot of expectations going into this. I didn't know where the story would go forward. I love the whale stuff with the last one, but with this world, there's so many directions they can go in, um, and they went into some interesting directions in this one. I think I liked it overall, but it's not a high like. It's a significant step down from the last one, which was just absolutely phenomenal. That was phenomenal up here, and this one is like, yeah, it's good overall, but it's. Do you wanna get into it? Do you want?
Yeah,
I
I'll give
mean,
my. I am also pretty. I love the first Avatar. I thought it was a really great accomplishment at the time, and I think the second one is like a masterpiece. It's one of the best of its kind ever made. It's one of my favorite movies that I've ever seen. So I went into this really ready to be sold. I was ready to be Avatar pilled. The people were coming out of it, and critics and stuff like that, saying, "Hey, if you're an Avatar fan, you're gonna love this thing. There's so much here for you to love if you're into this franchise." And there's still a lot there to love. Technically, you mentioned how incredible the movie is technically, and that's all still there. There's a lot of really jaw-dropping moments, a lot of really incredible visuals. The rendering of these islands and the sky and the floating of all these creatures. It feels otherworldly and it feels so full. There's so many shots where there's endless detail, endless depth, so much color and vibrancy and life to the image. And we look at so many movies made today at similar budgets to this, and it looks like it was made in like a studio by itself. It looks like it was made on some flat gray nothing world. They go into like a void of nothing in some of these movies, and you look at the image and there's nothing there. And I feel like I want to commend this movie for putting in so much effort to make the visual craft of filmmaking be as great as possible here. But unfortunately, I think I just left this thing very disappointed. I thought they ultimately are just really repetitive from the second film. I mentioned that aesthetically stunning, but it's still left me very cold. There's characters coming around dying in moments where I should feel something, and I don't even really recognize like who these characters are. And they bring in these fire tribes that are sort of like the co-leads of this, or like the new group of this movie, right? There's a fire tribe that comes in, and they're pretty threatening. They have some really scary scenes and some really cool moments, but there's almost nothing there to be to be dug into depth wise. There's no commentary. There's some commentary, but there's not a lot of complexity to it, right? And the last movie introduced these really interesting other cultures and gave them so much to work with, and all these new characters started to feel like part of the Avatar crew. And they introduced a lot of new characters here, but they feel like nothing, right? And I just left this ultimately feeling a lot of nothing. I thought it was good. There's a lot of good craft, a lot of good visuals here, but emotionally, I just was never really swept up in this. I never felt moved. I never felt involved. It just felt like I was watching deleted scenes from the last Avatar movie that never really totally led to anything new.
I think where you ended that is actually a perfect example of how this movie feels. It feels like you're just watching stuff from the last one that they took out, and this both of these were supposed to be one movie. It just feels like an extension of the last one, but you're not getting a lot of interesting stuff. And my biggest issue is that it does feel repetitive from the last one. Last one got to see cool whale scenes. You got to see them fight the military. The military is bad again, and that there are moments like there's a character goes into a really interesting direction in the second half of this movie, and then they just like throw that away and we're done with that, I guess. And it's just like, where are we going? And another problem with mine is they introduce this new fire tribe, but they don't really go into their culture or anything. Like, we have the water tribe, and they bond with whales and stuff, and they have their whole village and stuff. And then the fire people, there's like, what is even like, and what, like, there should be a juxtaposition from the water people to the fire people, the reverse. And the water people are very hopeful and optimistic, and then the fire people, you could have, they're very hateful and stuff. And I mean, I would have guessed they were going to have some sort of commentary of like, when, like, minorities need to, fight racism and, fight the higher power, and then sometimes they go against each other, and that hate turns them against each other. I thought they were going to go in that direction, but not necessarily. They're just fighting, and they're bad because.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what this movie was trying to go for thematically, and it goes into that line of like, violence is bad, but not when we do violence, and hatred is bad, but not when we're hateful. And they want to go along all these moments of saying, oh, violence is not the answer, we should never turn towards violence to solve our problems. But then they're just like, but kill all the humans though. And it feels like the narrative's never really checking that in the characters, and they take the characters in a direction in this that I was not really sure where they're going, and I didn't really like what they were doing with it. I don't want to spoil it, but the characters make a choice that I just don't think that they would make, and it was a thematically confusing movie to me because I just never really got a sense of where it was trying to go and what it was trying to make me feel. Where the last one, I walked out of it really knowing what James Cameron thought and what he felt, and he was really making essentially a Save the Whales movie, right? A movie about how James Cameron loves the oceans and we should care about the oceans. And this movie never offers anything personal like that. It never offers anything for you to really latch onto emotionally, and that was my biggest issue. I just never felt anything while watching this other than that's a really beautiful shot of an ocean or a tree, or it looks cool, but there's nothing more than just almost like screensaver stuff going on here.
And the movie also does something that the last one did it maybe like once or twice, but this one throughout, where it feels like we're just jumping to the next scene. Like, there are moments that feel like this should be an important moment, but it just happens really quickly, and then we're moving on to the next scene. And they do it multiple times throughout the film. I'm like, what are we doing? This movie's over 3 hours long, and you can spend more than half the film on this one thing that maybe isn't that interesting, but then you can't spend a lot of time on these things that seem very important. And I gotta talk about how, I've seen some people say that the movie isn't great, but it really gets great in the last 40 minutes with all the action. As great as the action is, it kind of started to lose me. And I honestly, there were moments where I was zoning out in the action. I was like, well, I'm not even sure what's going on. Like, a character, something happens to a character, and I'm like, oh, I guess that happened. It's not that it's convoluted. It's just there's so much of it that it just started to not be fun to watch.
Yeah, it's mind-numbing, and you mentioned it's kind of hard to follow what's happening sometimes moment to moment in the action sequences. They're so long, and it's hard to follow the momentum of like who's winning and who's losing in this fight right now. And all of a sudden, somebody will be attacked, and you'll be like, are they dead or are they injured? I don't really know. And then they'll just pop up like half an hour later, and you'll be like, oh, I guess they are fine. But something like that will happen a lot, where you just kind of lose track of who's where and who's doing what and why it matters. And EDM mentioned in the comments, I'll bring it up towards the end, but they want to talk about the future of this franchise, but we'll bring that up after some more of our thoughts.
I also want to add in, this movie just feels like, in general, greatest hits of the last one. Everyone loved the last one. So, like, I mean, they even towards the end of the movie basically play the same song that the last movie ended with. So it's like, what are we, like, how are we moving forward? And, we'll get into that. Where can this franchise go into the future? Because you can't do the same thing again. You can't have, the whales and the avatars versus the military. You gotta do something new. I mean, we definitely got to talk about that.
Yeah, I expected them to offer more visually. Like you mentioned, that the step up from the first movie to the second movie, it feels like a huge new direction. It feels like we're leaving all of the military stuff somewhat behind and moving on to this whole new location that offers something new visually and something new thematically to explore. And the Fire Tribe I thought was going to offer us that, and sometimes it does. When we see like their section of Pandora, it does look kind of interesting, but we don't really spend a lot of time there because we ultimately got to come back to military versus Wales again, right? And it seems
Yeah.
like it's all leading up to ultimately a lot of the same plot beats of the last one, and it doesn't offer any new locations, any new visuals. It doesn't necessarily have to offer me a super complicated plot or anything like that, but just take me to a new area of Pandora. Show me
Yeah.
the place of this planet. Don't just show me the same people doing the same exact stuff again.
One thing that had me excited for this was, in the last one, we have this whole arc with Spider getting captured by his father's clone and what's going to happen there. And this one continues that, but I'm not really sure how we're in much of a different spot with those characters by the end of this. That I just don't really see how this moved forward, and it also didn't go in a lot of interesting directions. And I was also looking forward to seeing how Zoe Saldana's character progresses and how she deals with the loss of her child. And you don't really get a ton of her perspective in this movie. She's kind of just there in the background.
Yeah,
And
the direction they take her character did not like, and I'm not going to say where they go, but it's like her personality shift felt so sudden. And the same thing for Jake Sully. They feel like they've changed a lot between this movie and the last movie, and I don't really understand like what inspired that change. It almost feels like they take steps back from where they were in terms of their character arcs at the end of Way of Water. Now it feels like they're having to step back and be like
yeah,
regressive characters to where they were previously, and I just wish if you're going to go that direction, give me some time with the characters to see them go in that direction. Don't just all of a sudden change them, off screen and not really, and then make them kind of go through the same arc again, you know?
yeah, and I have another problem where they just kind of like, oh, you haven't seen this character since the first one. Here they are, they're back, and there's no like introduction, like reintroduction. They're just like there. It made me think of actually like David Lynch, Twin Peaks: The Returns, how he just has a character just like there. But yeah, it's. I think overall the movie functions. It works if you're in on this franchise, but I'm not really seeing what new things it's added. I think part of the reason why the last one was so remarkable is because we hadn't seen that in 13 years, and this one has just been 3 years, and it doesn't feel that. There's not that shock of it's been 13 years. So maybe they take a longer break for the next one. I mean, they'll probably have to if they hadn't started making it. But yeah, I would be okay with that.
Yeah, EDM mentioned in the comments, they say, this is the rise of Skywalker, a franchise killer, a reboot's needed. I actually started laughing out loud at how bad the movie was. Swear they copied and pasted scenes, simply re-rendered to save on budget. I genuinely thought that in some of the action scenes at the end, I was like, is this just literally a shot from the last movie? Like, are you just copy and pasting because you're like, we got to make this
It was so
315. We got
similar.
to
Yeah,
add some more shots.
it felt so similar. Uh, uh, a good film critic, Dan Merle, in his review said there were some action sequences where it literally looked like it was in the same location from the last movie. It's like we're doing the same thing. Like there's an action sequence early on in the movie where there's this animal that's like flying. It's like this blimp bird or whatever, and that was a good action sequence, and that's basically what starts the movie. And that one was cool. That one was different, but the action sequence at the end is just like, how is this different from what we got before? I think we should jump into now. Where do we see this going in the future?
Yeah, I brought up EDM's comment because they mentioned this is essentially like a franchise killer. A reboot is needed. And I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but I think a break might be needed, right? You mentioned that the 13-year jump made us feel like, yeah, we're back in Pandora again. But I also feel like it gave them time to find something new to do with it and have technology advance for a little while so that when it came back, they could offer us something new we'd never seen. And a 2-year gap, there's not really any room to be offering us something new technology wise. But I do think this plot and this lore has maybe gotten a little too convoluted. They're talking about all of these rules and all of these like seed bearer stuff that I just don't really feel like people care about and are that invested in. I think maybe they got to condense this thing down a little bit, make it a little more simple. and get us to a new location. Like literally, if you just took this final battle and put it within like a volcano world or something, like just put something else in the background, it would feel a little bit more different. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think a little bit of a break, not 13 years, but maybe
No.
5. Let Cameron do a Terminator, do something else, and then
Yeah.
come back to this when something strikes him for a new direction. But yeah, we got to condense some of these characters down. We got to bring us to some new areas,
Yeah.
explore some new themes, because I was genuinely so shocked at where
You
this went.
you throw out Terminator, and honestly, I don't think that's really a bad direction to go in. I know he's mentioned that he's like writing one or something like that, and I think that doing one original movie and then maybe one go back to a franchise like Terminator or Alien, I think would be a good decision. Do an original, do Terminator, Alien, and then come back to Avatar and close this thing off with 4 and 5, or maybe even just 4.
Yeah, I think we got to get one more to wrap this thing up, because the way this ends is not satisfying to me. Like it doesn't wrap up character arcs or explain
No.
plot points or anything like that. And they were talking about this like, oh, it's kind of the end of a trilogy, and that just feels like cope. Like they realized that people were not feeling this one, so they were trying to be like, oh, it's actually the end. It's the end game of Avatar. You got to go see it. There's no way this is the end. This is not planned to be the end. It doesn't wrap up much of anything. So they've got to at least give us one more to wrap these things up. And as long as they can inject some new stuff into it, they still have all of that technology goodness there to make a great movie. So I don't want to downplay this and say it's terrible, because there's so much there that works. But all of that surface, all of that visual splendor, all that technology isn't going to make a movie great if the actual story and the character arcs within that are not great. And this is just not a great movie to me. I gave this a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I don't know if you've scored it yet, but that's where I'm
Yeah,
at on it.
that's my rating too. Um, I think I think there's no way they're going to 7.
No, I mean, unless the next one is truly a banger, they've got to start being
They're
realistic
not,
with
because
these.
I know he said a few years ago, oh no, I want to go to 7. Yeah, I don't. That's not gonna happen. They should close it out with 4 and 5. Do another like the 2-part story, and then that'll be it. But I just don't get, why aren't you go like the fire people? Shouldn't the final battle be like, or maybe a mixture of both? Like there's a volcano surrounded by the ocean or something. But no, nothing like that.
Yeah, and if they come back for sequels, I feel like they've got to start leaving the military behind, and I feel like they're not going to go that direction. It feels like they want to go to Earth and they want to explore the military side of the story more. And to me, that's just not interesting. I want you to go and explore these Na'vi tribes more. Go get into one of their cultures, explore their world. I don't need to see another hover ship come in and burn more trees again. Give us something new here, new conflict, new villains, because it's just kind of feeling stale. And that's coming from somebody who literally has the last movie in like my top 5 favorite movies. I think this one is kind of just like I mentioned at the top. It feels like deleted and extended scenes from that last one, where all the heart and all the soul is kind of gone. You're just watching like Avatar, the missing pieces.
Am I crazy, or was Michelle Yeoh not in the movie?
I don't believe so. Not on the cast list.
Because she was supposed to be in it. She was on the cast list, and then she was just gone.
We only had 3 hours and 15 minutes. How are you going to fit in everyone?
David Thewlis, yeah, David. If you're a David Thewlis fan, maybe lower your expectations. He's not in a ton of the movie. But if you're a fan of the actor who plays Spider, then raise your expectations, because he's basically the main character.
Yeah, it was a good conversation. All right, I don't want to get too far into spoilers or anything like that. I know Michael and Andrew are going to do a deep dive spoiler stream and go into all the details of this plot, because there is a lot to talk about and a lot of odd decisions with some characters and some relationships that I thought were strange. And I wish I could talk about them now, but I'm going to save my thoughts because I don't want to spoil that for you and the audience if you haven't seen it yet. But I do recommend it to an extent. It's a good time in the theater. It's a good reflection of where we're at technology-wise if you want to go out and remind yourself why the Mandalorian and Grogu should look like this, or why Avengers Doomsday should look like this. They have the money. They should make movies that look like this. But yeah, I think that makes it worth watching, but don't go into it expecting anything extremely great. It's just going to give you screensavers and good visuals, but not much else to latch onto. Any final thoughts from you, Ari? I think that's it. We're going to be live in just a couple of minutes doing the news show. So if you're one of the people watching us live, stick around. We won't be gone that long. But if you're watching just this review, hit subscribe if you liked it. Hit like if you liked it even more. We're going to be doing reviews all throughout the next couple of months. The new year means new movies, and it also means award season. So we've got all kinds of coverage coming up for you guys. But stick around. Here's the thing. And like I said, here's the news coming up in just a minute. If you're sticking around, we'll see you then. If not, bye-bye.